What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. On today's episode, we're gonna be focusing back on the 1965 Lincoln with the 7.3 Godzilla swap. Last time you saw it on the channel, we were starting to strip it down, remove the old engine, clear out the interior, and get it prepped for all the work that we're gonna be doing. We're gonna be kicking off this episode by shoving the 7.3 Godzilla between the frame rails of the Lincoln. So we're gonna get the 7.3 Godzilla on the engine hoist and see how it fits. What we want to do is see if we're going to use this giant 6-speed transmission. It stands over 17 inches tall from the pan to the top of the case. This car is going to be extremely low, so having something really tall in the car is going to end up taking a lot of space up in the floor, so we have the ground clearance that we're looking to achieve. What I want to do is see how much of our floor and our firewall we're actually going to have to cut out, because we've been thinking of maybe getting a different transmission, something a little bit smaller, so we'll have less to cut out and actually more room for your feet and the center console and everything inside the cab area. I think that maybe we should separate the engine and transmission at first just to see where it's gonna lie as far as the mounts forward and backwards. To stuff this in there, we'd have to cut a giant hole first. We're not gonna start cutting yet.
All right, now that we have this behemoth of a transmission disconnected off of our Godzilla motor, we're gonna go ahead and mock it up into the car. First, we're gonna install our brand new, fresh on the market, the ICT billet Godzilla motor mounts. These things are pretty sweet. Made in the USA, baby.
All right, so as you can see, we're already starting to pull the engine back out. And it hits everything. I was really hoping we didn't have to do much with the steering. I was just kind of hoping that we'd be able to continue to use this factory gearbox in the steering, but that's not gonna happen. So whole new design in the steering is gonna have to happen. It's got a rear sump, and the rear of the sump falls right on our drag link here. So that's gonna have to change. If we have to move it to the front, that means we have to get new steering knuckles also, because we'll have to change it to front steer instead of rear steer pickup. A lot of stuff's gonna have to change. So we're gonna pull it back out, remove the stuff that's in the way, gearbox and the brake booster and master cylinder, and then we will slide it back in. All right, so we pulled out all the steering arms and the steering box and set the motor back down in here. It gave us the clearance we need over here on the side, but now over here, not so clear. Exhaust manifold is resting on our frame rail here. So to even make this go down, we'd have to chop out a large section of the frame rail and box it in. And you can see here right now, we are not under the hood line yet. Our fuel rails are still sticking out of the hood line at this moment. So imagine if we put an intake manifold on here, that thing would stack up to somewhere up here. Really don't think anybody wants to see a cowl hood on this thing. So this engine in this inside the frame rails here, it is not going to work out. And we've been discussing going with a Crown Victoria front end. A lot of guys use them in the Ford truck community to add modern independent front suspension into vehicles that didn't previously have it. So what we're going to start with today is cutting out all the sheet metal that connects the fenders to the frame rails, and then that's going to give us room to start pulling out this section of frame rail, and we're just going to connect the original frame rail, run it straight past this bump out, and just come straight forward and reconnect with it to the original frame rail right here. So we're super busy in the shop. Dave's still fabricating a ton of stuff, so we have a special guest back in the house. Donaldo Grimaldo.
How you guys doing? So this is a cool project, man. I love these Godzillas. So I think the biggest thing we're gonna do, like you said, is just wipe all this out. Bang. We're gonna cut everything out, and then we'll start fresh and start designing some frames, like what you said. I'm just gonna whittle it all out. I'm just gonna cut everything. I'm just gonna cut it all out. We'll just make up the rest.
Don't go too crazy.
Now that I got the skirt roughly cut, everything's kind of clear, I can go ahead and make some marks and start getting ready to cut the frame. I'm gonna lob the frame from here. So 4 more big cuts, get this thing out, and then we can start cleaning and really figure out how this thing's gonna come together. All right, she's rocking and rolling. I have one more precise incision right down this main line, and this thing is rocking out. I gotta figure out how am I gonna get this thing out of here, huh?
While Donnie's prepping the Lincoln chassis, we're gonna get started on the Crown Vic front suspension. Well, luckily we were able to source a whole vehicle. Yay! We're probably gonna just pull the engine, drop the subframe out, push the car back outside. If anybody needs a 4.6 liter mod motor, hit us up. Kind of feel bad, but this thing's a runner. Still runs, still works.
Crown Vic.
All right, all fun aside, we got this thing racked up. Now it's time to tear it down so we can get all the donor parts out of it and prep for our Lincoln. All right, engine and subframe are out. We pulled the engine, subframe, and transmission all out as one piece. Now we're gonna go ahead and separate the subframe from the engine, plug this out of here, so then we can get all this stuff torn down so we can start fitting the subframe inside the Lincoln.
We're gonna go ahead and put the front subframe in. I wanna get my brain kind of locked and loaded of how we're actually gonna run it. Let's just get it in there, get it kind of lined up. I wanna see how the frame's gonna sneak in there. Start designing some of this. So now that we got this thing in here, starting to lay some ideas of how we're gonna do this. It's really important now, I think, that we go on the chassis table and set this thing up.
The ride height and having the suspension located perfectly is a big deal. Don't want to have a car that we can't align properly, isn't going to go straight, and doesn't end up being as high or low as we expect it to.
And that way we can physically shim the subframe, get everything perfectly straight and nice, and use lasers and all those gizmos, and then I can start laying my frame. The next problem up I want to do before we get the car on here is I want to make something to get this subframe level compared to where the ground is relatively right here at this table. So I'm just going to make myself a little bracket, mount it from the bottom, come out here, and this post is in a perfect spot. This will keep this thing propped up because you can see I can tilt it. So now we made our level mount. Before we make any drastic changes of actually getting the height of this thing, we're gonna go ahead and do the hard stuff and get the car now on the table. Once we get the car level and centered, then we can truly mess with this bad boy and get it pitched, rolled, whatever we want to do compared to the body. So let's get the body back on and then we go forward. So now my front support's in, so now I can actually run the rails on this, and then I can make something for the front as well once we get the ride height. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna design a plate for the wheels that come down and hook into this. So I'm gonna knock these wheels off and make like a jig to go over the disc itself and to be able to adjust the height. Now we have the brackets. These are gonna hang over the spindle like this. This is gonna hold us tight, and then from there, once we get everything where we want it, I'll be able to adjust the height by inserting my 2-inch tube here, coming down and making the height perfect for each side. The plan is to now start setting the ride height with the subframe itself. So we're gonna pull the the coils out, we're gonna go ahead and make ourselves a prop rod.
Yeah, we're using Ride-Tech shockwaves. We initially had some Ride-Tech parts for the stock subframe. So we had a strong arm kit for this 65 Lincoln that they were gracious enough to take back and get us out the new stuff because we decided to go for this Crown Vic front end. They're not gonna be here just today. So like Donnie said, we're gonna have just a mock shock with just cut solid, and that'll give us the right dimensions to be able to set all the other measurements.
Once we figure out the total height and the total compression of the shock, we're gonna go right in the middle of it, and that's where I'm gonna make the prop rod. So that means the suspension travel is gonna be right in the middle where it should be. All right, now that we have the old coil over, I'm just gonna go ahead and use this top plate. I'll lob this off, and I'll make the length of my tube right there, weld it together. We got ourselves a dummy shock. All right, so me and Andrew went ham. We took all the coilovers apart.
Don't ask us how we did it.
Do not ask us how we did it. It was the sketchiest thing, and I wish we got it on camera, but I also don't want any of my friends to know that I did it. But we got it apart. So now that we got it apart, we have our buckets that we salvaged. Andrew made some plates. Boom, boom. I sectioned off the bottom. From the kit that we have total height, compression, and we have static at 12.5. So I want to mimic a 12.5-inch ride height. So by doing all the math, I know that I have to physically cut that tube to 9.875 in length. Then from there, nothing fancy. The tube comes up. We'll weld this on, and then we'll have ourselves a geriatric shock.
All right, so we just finished getting the mock-up shock welded into its final location. The next part of getting our ride height is getting our hub center line to the right height that we need. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna measure the overall height of our tire, rim and tire setup. So from that measurement, then we can know our radius. So at that point, then we'll set our fixture up that's gonna bolt to the top of the table and be supporting our hub, and that's gonna dictate our ride height. Once we have the subframe located at this point, then we could just drop the car down onto it. We put a lot of time into getting our subframe straight.
Yeah, so what we're gonna do next is we're gonna start working on the rails. We still have to get the width right, but I can get a general idea of how the rails are gonna go. My first mark was I wanted this to bend out towards the frame to hit my perch. And I wanted this part to bend down to get the length and the height down there to my perch. Then I'll test fit it and see how much more I gotta do. Let's go see where it is now. Let's see if I can fit it in here. Now I know it's gonna go here, so I got my downward slope. I'm gonna wanna go down a little bit more and see this outward bound. I need to come out a lot more. Then we'll have the making of the frame.
The kids, eat your protein supplements.
You see how it's starting to look like a frame though?
There you go. Multiple bends.
So now it's starting to fit.
All right, now we've got our centering hole here cut out, and now we're gonna also start making our through holes here. So we've already started to cut out our holes that we're gonna use to mount with these large 1/2-inch bolts. So what we're also gonna do is we're gonna make an inserted sleeve in here to give a little bit of structure to the tube so we can use the clamping force needed to be able to hold the subframe onto the main frame of the car. Now we've got our tubing into the frame rail. That's gonna give us our spacer so we can let the top mounting bracket come down and there's enough space and it'll sit level. Like we said also, that's also gonna give us support to not pinch the rail once we tighten everything down. So this is the makings of our first side. This is the passenger side. So now we have a really good idea of how we're gonna do the other side. So before we start finalizing on this side, we're gonna get to probably about this same point with the other side. and then we'll finalize the connection point at the front.
All right, so we got the laser on here. We actually found a body casting place right in the middle of here, casting hole that was directly in the middle. What we did is we took a body line, which is probably the triest and truest point here. That bracket, don't mind the bracket, it's a little bent. We took that, double checked it, and came down, and we got the middle of the subframe with that casting hole directly in the middle of it. So now the last thing we have to do is we're gonna do an X pattern here from a suspension mounting point. Get this, buddy. To our lower control arm. Now what we're doing is making sure the X pattern of the front subframe is perfectly straight with the rear, both measurements. So we checked that. We had the same exact measurement of 109 5/8 on the other side. So we are good to go.
And right now what we're gonna be doing is making the section that is gonna mate up in here nice and tight. Just like if we were putting two tubes together, like notching tubes, we wanna have this an extremely tight fit because this is gonna have to be the strongest area of the frame rail where it connects back into the original framework of the car. Donnie right now is going to be doing a miter cut right here to cut off this section. We were going to try to do it initially with this piece, but I think it's going to be a better fit if we just cut it off here, make a brand new piece that fits the profile of the core support here. The method that we use to get all the angles on the frame rails included cutting and bending open the square tubing. We're now going to have to fill in all these gaps. So we're going to have to cut out some angles. It's pretty tedious, cutting them close, then grinding them down and getting them into place. We have 4 of them to make. We're getting there, moving along, getting these fill pieces for our frame rails in. Got 1, 2, 3 already completed. I just have this one last one. Keep on cutting, keep on grinding, keep it moving. See, Dave has just made our first connection from the original Lincoln chassis to our brand new frame rails, and you can see here we have a lot of work to do, but this is just the beginning. And you can see from above in the engine bay the foundation for our new frame rails here. We've got the Crown Vic crossmember set into place, and it's not just set there. It took a lot of measuring and confirming that everything was straight, because if you have the chassis and the frame or the suspension geometry off, you're gonna be fighting getting a proper alignment. The car will never go straight. It'll pull all the time. So like I said, a lot of time was spent measuring and making sure that everything is the way it should be. There's still tons more work to get everything nice and structurally strong. There's a lot more bracing to go in each one of these corners where the frame rail bends. So don't look at this and think that this is 100% complete or this is all that's gonna be holding it together. Mike, what do you think about what's going on here?
I was actually laying in bed a little worried about this because as of now, it seems to me we're only tying it in these 2 points where we kind of boxed out the old frame. I kind of feel like we need to go through that box and tie it into the box frame that's in the Continental. I also kind of feel like maybe adding some supports from up here on this top of these fenders into the frame would also help. Because in the old Continental, all this metal was part of the support that we cut out. So, I mean, yeah, we're gonna be building some beauty panels to hide all this stuff at the end, but I was thinking maybe like some 1-inch tubing, maybe 4 spots to kind of tie the whole front of the Continental to the frame would probably be great too. So if any of you guys have any thoughts, if you've done this before, throw it in the comment section and we'll be sure to make some improvements. We also have all these brackets that Donny pre-cut, which will be getting bent and welded on all these little spots. So not only does it look cool, but it's just gonna add more linear footage for us to get beads around this whole thing. So we're not just welding this together, we're gonna be doing this as well on all these spots. So that's gonna definitely help.
A lot more strength is going into this frame. So that's a wrap for this episode. Next time we're gonna be back boxing in the rest of the frame rail and getting it connected to the original chassis. We're also gonna be dropping in the Godzilla engine and making sure that thing fits in here now that we have the subframe situated. We're also gonna be doing some stuff with the rear suspension of this car. And we also have some updates coming for all those people who wanted to know on the 71 Chevelle. We've been waiting on some parts.
That's right. I just came back from attacking the clock and I got all the missing pieces. So we're getting ready to jump back on the Chevelle, get this thing done, and send it out for paint. Woo!
Yeah, let's go. So make sure you guys stay tuned to the channel for all the updates. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel as well. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace out.
Is that how the YouTube guys do it these days? They go, hey y'all, how you doing? We're gonna get the caddy on the frame
It's
table.
not a caddy, Donnie.
Oh, it's a Continental.
Continental. American classics, baby.
I really dropped the ball on that one. So
We're gonna get the old Thunderbird on the lift.
we're gonna get the Thunderbird on the lift again.